the title that we are using today, which is Rediscovering Your Reality. Because although Baba does say he gives us the pen with which to draw our future fortune, the future fortune that we draw is, of course, the same fortune that we drew 5,000 years ago, and it's the same fortune that we will draw in 5,000 years' time. And the idea of the cycle being 5,000 years and repeating identically, a lot of BKs have difficulty, initially at least, in accepting this idea of a 5,000-year cycle that repeats identically. I'm a little bit weird, and for me, when I came into GAN 35 years ago, it was the 20th of August 1990 was the first day I stepped foot in a BK centre. And I was intrigued by what I heard, and I will share a little bit more of what I heard. But after a few lessons, and many of you who will have heard of or met Dr. Prashant, who runs the centre, the BK centre here in Cambridge, and will may know that the way he teaches the course is not along the traditional 7 days sequence that we all know and we hear about. So I didn't hear about God until maybe 5th or 6th session. And I had 2 reactions to being told about God, because I was told about God in the context of the cycle. And so God comes, he teaches that this world that we experience, this reality that we live in, is a 5,000-year cycle that repeats identically. And I thought, do you know, if a human being was going to start a cult or a religion or a sect, they would never come up with something as ridiculous and crazy and insane as a cycle of 5,000 years that repeats identically. Therefore, this must be true, and it must be God. I said I was a bit weird. This was the thing that hooked me to understand that this was God. And for many years, I used to describe that experience as being how I recognized Baba. But I think with all of us, however we recognize Baba, what really happens is at that particular point in the cycle, when it's time for us to recognize him, he puts his incorporeal thumb on an incorporeal thumbprint sensor in the soul here. You remember we used to have these before we had cameras on our phones that would detect our face and allow us to access the phone. We used to have thumbprint sensors. So God, of course, I think this is why in devotion they say God is thumb-shaped, because he puts his incorporeal thumb on the thumb sensor of the soul, and the soul goes, oh, and opens up and recognizes this is God. So for me, it was the point at which I was told there's a cycle and it's 5,000 years and it repeats identically. I wasn't looking for God. I wasn't aware that I was looking for God, is probably a more accurate way of saying that. I was always interested in truth. I was always interested in understanding how do things work. So when I was at school, I studied mathematics, physics, sciences, and I went to university. I did a degree in electronic engineering. It was always how do things work and how can they be made to work better. And so I was working as an engineer originally. Then I came to Cambridge in 1983, so 42 years ago now. And I joined an innovation laboratory here on the Science Park. It's where I met my wife, Alison. And I worked there for about 7 years before I came into GAN. And the reason I came into GAN was that I had moved from doing engineering work to doing consulting work. So I was no longer designing electronics and software, but I was now consulting to companies to help them run their projects more effectively. And in 1990, I was asked to run a major project for one of our big clients, a company in Holland called Philips. Many of you will have heard of the Philips company based in the Netherlands in Holland. And the project was going to start in the summer. And for big projects, you always have a initial meeting, what they call a kick-off meeting, like the kick-off at the start of a football match. The idea is that all of the key people from the client organization attend that meeting so that they all commit to the project. They all agree that this is the project we should pursue. Because if you don't get everybody together in one meeting at the same time, later on, if there's a problem with the project, and all technical projects run into problems, somebody will say, I was never in favor of this project, and then it's a big disaster. So you need everybody together in the meeting room for the kickoff meeting. And there was only one day that the key people in the client could meet together, and that was on the 16th of May, 1990. I was told that that was the date of the meeting, and my heart sank. And the reason my heart sank was because the 16th of May, 1990, was also my son Alexander's first birthday. And I had agreed with Alison, my wife, that I would take a day's leave from work and we would have a birthday party for Alexander with all of his little friends. And we would have jelly and ice cream and cake and chocolate and all the things that 1-year-old children enjoy. For me, this requirement for me to be in Holland on that day was devastating. It felt like I was being ripped in half. I was being torn into two pieces. One piece was Geoff, the dad, the father, who desperately wanted to be at Alexander's first birthday party. And the other half was Geoff, the project manager for the major project we were doing for Philips. And in the awareness of Geoff, the role of Geoff, the father, I desperately wanted to be in Cambridge. And in the role of Geoff, the consultant, the project manager, I desperately wanted to be in Eindhoven. And you can't be in two places at once. We didn't have Zoom in those days, so you couldn't be in multiple places as we all are today. And so it was an experience that is the worst experience of stress I've ever had. And ultimately, this led to me being off work with stress. My family doctor signed me off from work, and I was away from work for a few weeks. I went to see a psychiatrist to see if the psychiatrist could understand what was wrong, what was going on. The company I worked for paid for private medical insurance for all of its employees. And so I was able to go and see a very experienced and a very highly qualified psychiatrist. He actually ran the psychotherapy unit at the hospital here in Cambridge, which is the Cambridge University Teaching Hospital. And so you can imagine that I felt that going to see the person who was the head of psychotherapy at one of the world's leading university hospitals, if anybody was going to be able to help me, it would be him. Unfortunately, after a 3 hour consultation, he looked at me over those half glasses that they wear that make them look very intelligent. And he said to me, "You should be happy." And so this was his best diagnosis for my situation. Now, what I understand now, looking back, he meant was, I can't find any reason why you should be unhappy. You've got a happy marriage, a good job, a healthy child, a house, live in Cambridge, you've got good health. There's no reason that you should be unhappy. And of course, life creates these situations in order to move us in a certain direction. And in my case, it eventually moved me to come along to the BK Centre here in Cambridge on the 20th of August, 1990. Alison came along with me. And that first evening, a young lady called Kathy, who had been coming to the centre for about 2 years, had asked Prashant, who ran and still runs the centre, can I have a student to teach some knowledge to? Many of you will have had the experience that as you start to understand knowledge, you want to share it with others. And so Kathy had asked, could she have a student? And so I ended up being Kathy's first student. I think I also was Kathy's last student because after she had me, she decided she wasn't yet ready to teach BK knowledge because I was too scientific, and I was told, you are a point of light, and I want to know what wavelength, how many nanometers is this point of light. So my scientific way of looking at the world was a significant challenge to Kathy and was a significant challenge to me during my early years in Brahmin life. But one thing Kathy said that evening really opened my intellect. And she asked me why I'd come to the centre. And I explained that I was off work with stress. I explained this experience of wanting to be at Alexander's birthday party and also wanting to be at the client meeting and feeling myself torn apart by these two impossibly opposing desires to spend the 16th of May in the right place. Kathy listened and she looked at me and she said, "Oh, that's easy." Now, I've just been to see the head of psychotherapy at Cambridge and he doesn't know what's wrong. And Kathy, who has got no medical experience, she's an administrator, a secretary working for a temping agency. So they provide temporary secretarial staff. She has 2 years experience of Gyan and no other qualifications. So I'm really intrigued about what Kathy is going to tell me about why she thinks my problem is easy. So what do you mean this is easy? And Kathy said, your problem is you don't know who you are. And I said, I think I do. I have certificates. I can bring them in and show you. And she said, no, you think that you are Alexander's father. You think you are the consultant who works for the innovation lab. You think you are Alison's husband. You think you are Mary and Anne's brother. You think you are Sadie and Arthur's son. But those are all roles that you play, and you are the actor who plays those roles. And in that moment, I literally was pulled back into this experience of being the soul, being the actor who is inside and is aware that I play all of these different roles, the role of the father, the role of the husband, the role of a brother, the role of a son, and the role of my professional work. And it was such a profound experience to rediscover the reality of who I am. I could not believe how much relief it gave me. The tension that I was carrying, the worry that I was carrying, all disappeared. And I thought, wow, this is magical. And so after that session that evening, we left, and on the way home, Alison and I went to the supermarket to do some shopping. And I can remember pushing the supermarket trolley or cart around the supermarket aisles and looking at people and thinking, wow, they don't know that they're souls. It was just so clear to me that I am a soul actor playing the part of Geoff, pushing the trolley, the cart around the supermarket. And all of these other people I'm encountering are doing the same. So I was amazed. I felt, wow, I've understood this. I've accepted this. This is my reality. Until, of course, I woke up the next morning and it had all gone. I was back to being plain old body conscious, confused Geoff. But, and here's the big but, I had had that experience. And I think this is what happens to all of us in our own individual, unique ways. We have an experience which is a kind of gift that Baba and drama give to us, to give us an experience of what it's like to discover reality, to realize that we are a soul, to realize that we are playing a part in a drama. And then that experience is something that we may lose, it may slip away as we go back into our everyday consciousness. But we now know that it's possible. And because we now know it's possible, we can now make effort in order to regain that experience as a more consistent reality in our everyday lives. So, with that introduction, I have a small number of slides that I would like to share with you that hopefully will add some extra structure and some extra material to support what I've just been speaking about. So hopefully you can see my screen. I think it's, can somebody put their thumb up if they can see that? Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can see it.
Very good. Okay. I always like to check because you can end up 10 slides in and then somebody says, we can't see the presentation.
No, it's perfect.
Okay, so rediscovering reality. Let's start off with how life is for us at the end of the Iron Age and for everyone who has not yet had an introduction to Baba. So, our reality is generally one way of thinking about our reality is in terms of these four layers, starting from a most external layer of our possessions, the physical things that we have around us, our house, our car, our phone, our computer, our bicycle, whatever things we have around us, these form a big part of our experience of reality. At a more subtle level, the next more subtle level, we have achievements, things that I've achieved in my life. So maybe I have some academic qualifications. Maybe I've had some sporting achievements. All sorts of things that we may have achieved. And sometimes there's a relationship between these. I may have a little trophy that I won when I was at school, age 12, in the one-legged race. And that possession itself is not worth very much money, but it is really important to me because it embodies a certain achievement. That day when I was the one who crossed the finish line first in the one-legged race. Then at the next more subtle level, there are various roles that I play. And whenever there are roles, there are also relationships. So I mentioned Alexander, my son. So when Alexander was born, I adopt a role of being a father. I can only have that role if I have children. When Alison and I got married, then I can adopt the role of being a husband, only because there is a relationship with another person, in this case, my wife, Alison. And then at the deeper level, the next deeper level, my reality is formed from my thoughts and my feelings. And when we're body conscious, of course, all of these things are related to physical reality. We think about things in a physical way. The roles that we adopt and the relationships that we experience are physical. Our achievements are measured somehow in the physical world, and our possessions are things around us. Now, this, I guess, only works in English, so the translators will have to explain slightly. But if you look at the first letters of each of these words, then you see it spells the word part. And part is one of the English words that Baba uses in English in the Murli. It was probably in today's Murli 4 or 5 times that you have a part that you play in the drama. And so we can think of these things, the possessions, achievements, roles, thoughts and feelings, as the part that we are currently playing on the stage, the part that we are currently playing in the drama. But you will also notice that if you begin from this end and go in this direction, it spells the word trap. So we have a part, we play a part, but as we start to identify with the part, we become increasingly trapped. We move from being aware of ourselves as the actor, the soul, and we start to become entangled in our thoughts and feelings. We become entangled in our roles and relationships. We become entangled in our achievements, and we become entangled in our possessions. And so at this time of year, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, many people are experiencing reality on the beach. And so here we see a individual lying under a sunshade with a cold drink on a deck chair, enjoying the sunshine. Of course, if they're on vacation, then they're probably not a BK because BKs don't take vacations. What we do is we serve nature. So if this is a BK, then they are currently serving nature. Baba has described how our experience is generated and how it is rooted in a word that appears many times in the Murli. In Hindi, the word is smriti, and it's translated in English usually to awareness. It can also mean memory, but in essence, it means the awareness of who I am. My conflict that I described at the beginning between Geoff, the father, and Geoff, the project manager, the consultant, the professional, is because when I have the smriti of being a father, then my attitude, my vision, my world, and my actions are all driven from that awareness. The way I experience reality is the reality of a father. When I switch into the smriti of being the consultant, then my world, my reality is the reality of the consultant. And this switch can happen in a fraction of a second. We also know that Baba talks about turning on the switch of soul consciousness. This is the switch of smriti. When my awareness changes, my reality changes. My attitude changes, my vision changes, the world that I experience changes. And if I pay attention, if I have my attention turned within, then I can observe how am I experiencing reality. And that tells me what smriti I am in. We can't see our smriti directly. There is a saying in India that the eye, this kind of eye, the eye cannot see itself. The tooth cannot bite itself. The knife cannot cut itself. In the same way, the smriti cannot see itself, but we can know what smriti we have based on how the world how the world presents itself to us. There's an example that I often use. It was from a professor who gave a lecture here in Cambridge in 1997. And he gave the example of a pig. And he said, if you are a veterinary surgeon, when you look at a pig, the pig looks like a patient. When you are a pig farmer, when you look at the pig looks like money. When you're a butcher and you look at the pig looks like meat. Now, the pig is not changing. The pig is always the pig, but the vet sees it as a patient. The farmer sees it as money, and the butcher sees it as meat. And his conclusion from this example was, we don't see things as they are. We do not see reality as it is. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. He was basically articulating the same point that Baba emphasizes again and again, which is, as is your smriti, so is your drishti. The world that you experience, the reality that you experience tells you what awareness you are in. So this is the underlying process of consciousness, the underlying mechanism of consciousness, the underlying circuitry of consciousness. that creates our experience of reality. But Baba doesn't just tell us that that's how it works. He also tells us what true reality looks like. And he does this with these 3 points that he comes back to again and again and again. Who am I? A point of conscious energy, a spiritual actor with an eternal part. Who is he? He is the supreme actor, the supreme soul, the one who is the creator and director of the drama, the one who is our father, our teacher, and our guru. And what is going on? What is reality out there? It's an eternal, identically repeating 84 birth, 5,000 year drama cycle. Now we know all this, we have all this information. Within the first 7 days, we know all of this. And yet, Baba warns us, it is not enough to know this. You have to embody the awareness. You have to be, in Hindi, he says, you must be smriti swarup. Your form must be of the smriti of a soul, not just sochna swarup. Sochna in Hindi means thinking. So not just thinking I'm a soul while still being body conscious, but having the awareness that I am a soul. As you sit here on this Zoom call right now, are you seeing this person on the other end who is speaking? Are you seeing me as a soul? Is your awareness that there is a soul actor playing the same part that you experienced 5,000 years ago? Or is your experience that it's Thursday and Geoff's doing the Thursday talk? So this is the checking that we have to do. One of the Lockick quotes that I really like, that I think helps us in this relation, comes from Marcel Proust, a French writer and philosopher. And he said this, I'll give it you in English in a moment, but he said, La véritable voyage de découverte ne consiste pas à chercher de nouveaux paysages, mais à avoir de nouveaux yeux. In English, the true voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. New eyes. This is what we're here to do. We're here to rediscover our soul conscious eyes so we see the world through the same eyes that Baba sees the world through. Now, what is it that gets in the way of that? Well, we know it's body consciousness. We know it's Maya. We know that it's that we haven't yet switched our smriti. We haven't yet changed our smriti from I am a body to I am a soul. What we have done is we've changed our smriti from I am a human being to I am a BK. And a BK is a human being who is endeavoring to become soul conscious. Another Lockett quote that I like is Winston Churchill said, democracy is the worst form of government except for all the other forms that have been tried from time to time. I think there's a BK equivalent to this, which is I am a BK is the worst form of body consciousness except for all the other forms that we have tried from time to time. Because we come into Gyan and we still have possessions. We have our white clothes, we have our shawl, we have our badge, and maybe it's a badge that Daddy gave us, and so it's a special badge. We have our achievements, my service results. How many years have I survived Brahmin life? How many times have I been to Madhaban? We have our roles and relationships in the center with seniors. Do the seniors know my name? Oh, the senior remembered my name, and so I feel special. And then we have thoughts and feelings about my service. Does my service go well? Did my service get appreciated, etc., etc.? And when we look inside the self, the question is, do I find myself attaching to any of these things? Do I find myself experiencing this as my reality? And so, again, this is why Baba is saying, look inside, turn within. The translation into English is usually become introverted, which can be a little confusing, but he's literally saying, turn your face within, be antar mukt in Hindi. Turn your face within and look and see inside yourself. When a senior comes into the room, do I notice myself sitting up a little bit more upright? What is my awareness? What is my smriti? Because the journey for us is the journey of I am a BK to I am a soul. And we know we have the information that I am a soul. And it's very easy to delude ourselves into believing that because I know I'm a soul, because I understand that I'm a soul, because I can talk about being a soul, because I believe I'm a soul, we can be deluded into thinking I am soul consciousness. I am soul conscious. This is the whole journey. And remember, this journey took Brahma Baba 33 years. It took him 33 years from Shiv Baba giving him the name Brahma to him becoming Avyakt in 1969. Daddy Janki was a BK for 84 years. And so the chances are that if I'm not really deeply making the effort to be soul conscious, then I'm moving along being a BK and feeling I'm okay being a BK. So this is the effort we need to be making, that we need to be looking and checking, do I see the world through soul conscious vision? And we still have a part, but what are my possessions? My Baba and none other. What is my achievement? My achievement is that I have recognized who this is, that I have understood the drama, that I recognize others as souls. What are my roles and relationships? I'm Baba's child, and everyone else is a brother soul, even in a female body, a brother soul. And my thoughts and feelings will be about me, the soul, my Baba, and about other souls. So there's nothing that I've described today that you don't know. I gave you no new information. But the question that I think we all have to ask ourselves many times per day is, what is the reality I'm experiencing right now? And is it soul conscious reality, or is it BK conscious reality? Because our journey to rediscover reality is making that shift. You become a BK very quickly, but the effort is in arriving at that place where I experience myself to be a being of light in the center of the forehead, as I act and interact in this drama. And so I'm just going to invite you for the last slide to join me in a short meditation. As I sit here, I take a couple of deep breaths. As I breathe out, I consciously relax. I become aware of myself, the observer of this voice, the observer of this experience of being supported by my chair. I become aware of the sensations in my body. I become aware of the silence that sits behind my observation of reality. I sit here between the ears and behind the eyes. I look out through these windows. And I experience myself to be still, to be silent, an actor in this drama who comes back to this point every 5,000 years. Exactly what I experienced 5,000 years ago is what I am experiencing right now. I now know who I am. I know to whom I belong. There are no questions anymore. All my questions have been answered. I have rediscovered reality. Om Shanti.
Thank you, Jeff. It was very deep and very helpful for all of us. There was a question if you could repeat the slide, the part of body consciousness, but probably now we don't need it after this meditation. Um,
Wh-
uh,
Which particular, because there were several slides with part on them, weren't there? So the BK conscious one or the very first one?
I don't know exactly, but it was
Say
interesting.
BK, body conscious one. It
Oh
says.
yeah, okay. So
Oh,
I deliberately didn't call it BK body conscious, but I did call it BK conscious. So let's just pop that back up again. There we go. So,
yes, okay.
yeah, there we go. And the key thing to realize here is it's not wrong to have these things. You know, you need a shawl, you need your white clothes, you need your badge in case you get lost. The question is, do I base my sense of self-value on these things? Is this how I gauge my worth when I look at someone else and they don't have as big a badge as me? Nobody has a bigger badge than Aviak Bapdada when he's using Daddy Gulzar's body. I did think one year that I would make an even bigger badge with hundreds of red LEDs on it, but I decided you can't upstage Baba with a bigger badge. So none of these things are a problem in themselves. The key is how much do they affect my sense of who I am? And if they go away, if I lose my favorite shawl or my badge falls off and goes into the drain, do I lose my sense of calm and peace and stability?
Yes.
I can send you these slides afterwards if you like. I mean, there's not much on them, but if anyone would like them, I'm very happy to
Yes, if you
send them.
can do that, you send them to your guest and he
Mm.
will share it.
Yeah, will do.
Yeah, very interesting. I like the trap, the part and the trap, because even if you're a BK, you may get trapped into if somebody gets your soul, for example.
Mm.
Sometimes you can see souls that are really, I mean, annoyed by some things.
Yeah, I mean, I actually remember once when I first got my first iPhone, I think it was the iPhone 4. I'd had a BlackBerry before, and I got an iPhone, and 20 years ago maybe. And I remember going on a train journey from Cambridge into London King's Cross. It's about a 40-minute train journey. And I must have taken my phone out of my pocket 20 times to look at it. And I was telling myself, I'm looking to see if I've had any calls. And of course, if you have a call, it rings. And so I realized I'm fetching this out of my pocket so many times because I'm intoxicated that I've got this iPhone. And it really made me smile because if I'd have had my old BlackBerry or even my old Nokia before that, even if somebody had rang me up on my Nokia, I wouldn't have got it out of my pocket in public because people would have seen that I had this crazy old phone. And so I think one of the key things for us as Brahmins is to be paying attention so we notice these things, but when we notice them, to laugh at ourselves about it. Because if we become heavy, oh no, I'm still body conscious, I'm still thinking about my possessions, we really lose our lightness and our sense of connection to Baba. And you can joke with Baba about these things. You can see yourself doing it and talk to Baba and say, "Hey, Baba, look, I'm obviously intoxicated with my new phone." And I mean, a parent would give a child a toy and say, "There you are," and the parent would be very happy with your intoxication. So if you catch yourself being intoxicated with your phone or your shawl or whatever, include Baba in that intoxication, and it will change the feeling. And all of the more ways we can find to involve Baba in our daily life in a practical way, the more we are having yoga. And the more we are having yoga, the more we accumulate spiritual power. And the more we accumulate spiritual power, the more soul conscious we become. Otherwise, we're really trying very, very hard to make something happen. I was talking with someone the other day about this idea of volcanic yoga. And this person said to me, "Yes, I think a lot of BKs feel that volcanic yoga is like the mountain has to try really, really hard to produce the volcanic eruption." But of course, a volcano erupts. It's the nature of the volcano to erupt. A volcano is not a mountain that's trying really, really hard. And it's a big challenge, I think, for us to get past this idea that effort means laboring and trying really hard. The translation can be problematic here because the word in Hindi that is often used, sometimes Baba does use a word mehanat, which is effort, but often he uses the word purusharat. And purusharat means, purush means soul or self, and arat means effort for or that which is beneficial to. So the word he's using, it literally means to Hindi ears, a Hindi person would hear that word and, oh, I have to do that which is of benefit for the self. It gets translated into English as you have to make effort. And then often I was told by a German BK, when it's translated from English to German, it becomes you have to labor. So it's like Baba's saying, do that, child, do that which is a benefit for the self. And we hear in English, you have to make effort. And then we hear in German, you have to, you've got your shovel and you've got to dig and it's real labor. So sometimes I think it's useful to go back to the original language when we get stuck on some of these words. And today it's easy because we have the smartphone app. We can look at the different languages. We can pick out, drop it into Google Translate or Chat GPT and ask it to translate for us and get some nuance back into the meaning. So even going from Hindi to English, a lot gets lost. If somebody then has English translated to another language, then there's a lot of potential for leakage and things to be lost in the translation.
Yes, you're right about that because in every language the translation gets a different meaning, and it's good to know the exact meaning of the word. And
Yeah.
probably you're very fortunate that you have Prashant there so he can explain, or people who are close to BKs that are Indian souls, then
Well,
it's easy
you
for.
you say that, but I used to ask, Hindi speaking, because you see a lot of the people who do the translation speak Hindi, but they were raised in England. And so they're not immersed in the culture of India in the 1930s, 40s, 50s. And Baba is speaking using examples from Indian life in that period. And so they may not understand, each word can mean several different things. As you know, if you translate but very often you find that the translator always translates the particular Hindi word into the same English word. And there are, I mean, a good example is that there are at least 3 or 4 words that Baba often uses that all get translated into the English word thought or thinking. So one of them is Sochna. I mentioned earlier where Baba has said you have to be Smriti Swarup, so the embodiment of Smriti, not the embodiment of thinking. So this word Sochna. It means general thinking about anything. Then there's another word which comes, I think, through Urdu, and because Baba used Hindi words, Urdu words, Punjab, lots of different languages. So there's another word, Khialat, which really means an idea, a concept, but that gets translated into thoughts. And then there's another word which is used a lot in the Murli, which is sankalp, and that gets translated into thought. But a sankalp is a thought with an intention to do something. It's like you've resolved to do something. And it can be a simple thing. It can be, I'm going to make lunch today. I know, I think I will have dal. I will make some dal. So that's a sankalp. It's an intention to do something. It's a particular type of thought. And yet all of these words get translated into English as thinking or thought. So I do think that we lose a lot if we don't do and I think for me at least, maybe it's because of my engineering and science background, I find that going into the depth of the words does help me a lot. My wife, who's an arts person, she comes from, she studied English and German and French at university, and she worked in Germany for a number of years. She doesn't get anything at all out of retranslating the words because for her, it's more about the feeling and the flow and the connection with Baba. So each of us has to study in the way that is most nourishing for ourselves and experimenting with different ways to discover what works best for us as individuals.
Great, great. I think that you explained, there was a question, but you gave an answer to that. How could there be a smoother way from body conscious reality to soul conscious reality without becoming conscious reality?
Yeah, I don't think they can. I mean, I think the reason that Baba gives us the BK Mariadas and timetable is because it is the best stepping stone from which we can become soul conscious. It's a little bit like if you learn martial arts, one of the first things that you'll be taught by a martial arts instructor is how to stand, because how you stand positions you to do the next movement. And in the same way, I think developing the awareness of being a BK provides a way for us to move from the entanglement of the Iron Age. It steps us into the Confluence Age, and it's only in the Confluence Age that we can then make the movement towards being soul conscious. And ultimately, over the years, coming from a science background, you can imagine I spent a lot of years trying to work things out of how to do them. And it's taken me a very long time to realize that most of, if not all of the transformation that happens because I stay in Baba's company. And by staying in Baba's company, I mean anything from I wake up for Amrit Vela, I eat the diet that Baba approves of, I read Murli, anything that I'm doing that has been advocated by Baba helps the soul be in relationship. Now, obviously, ultimately, we would all love to be in volcanic yoga, seed form all the time, but it's not practical. But if our intention is always to stay in Baba's company, then the power comes and he notices that we are dedicated to him, that we are, we have this attitude that really from the depth of my heart, all I want to be is yours. I just want to be yours. I just want one Baba and none other. And yes, I will slip out of that. And yes, I won't be able to maintain it all the time. But if that's my intention, then Baba has great appreciation for that. I remember I was lucky in my early days that Daddy Janki took me a little bit under her wing. I'd been in Guyana about 3 years, and she said, if you have any questions, speak to Manda, and Manda will talk to Daddy, and because of the translation. And so I took a lot of advantage of that connection and that sense of that. And I went through a phase where a lot of things were going wrong in my Brahmin life. And I remember explaining these to Daddy. And some of them were things that you wouldn't necessarily want to talk about because you would feel embarrassed about them. And the message that came back immediately from Daddy was, the Lord is pleased with an honest heart. You know, we all have a lot of rubbish inside us after 63 births in the Iron Age. We all make huge mistakes. And again, the translation sometimes plays this down. You know, some of the language that Baba's using in Hindi is very stark in terms of how much rubbish has been accumulated in the soul. But if we're honest about what's there, if we're honest about what we see, and we genuinely want to move in the direction Baba is talking about, Baba gives a lot of help because he appreciates that honesty and that cleanliness of the heart, that desire to become pure. And, you know, if we weren't in a mess, he wouldn't need to come. So, you know, we at least provide him some employment for the confluence age. If it wasn't for all of our mess, he would have nothing to do. So I think he's quite entertained by all of the mistakes that we make. You know, I think sometimes he says, you know, this experience that they talk about sometimes called déjà vu, which is like where you see, I think what's happening is Baba rewinds the drama a bit to show Brahma Baba, hey, look what this soul did here. Look, you know, just. So we provide him with lots of entertainment. And as long as we stay light about our mistakes, we have to make effort. We have to get that balance between making effort in a way that demonstrates how much we are devoted to Baba, but at the same time be very light about the mistakes that we make and give them to him. In fact, the only advice I ever received from him directly, because when I came into Gyan, there were no personal meetings anymore. I'm sure that's the case for many on this call. But I did end up in a little group on stage in 2007. It was a group of about 8 or 10 double foreign brothers went on stage, and the only 2 words Baba spoke to me directly. It's funny, I was sitting in this group and Baba's there, and the thought goes through my mind, hey Baba, it would be really nice if you looked at me now and said something. Well, you know, they have this expression, be careful what you wish for. So he looked at me and he said, yeah, problem? In other words, do you have a problem?
Oh.
And then the rest of this little conversation with the group was, if you have any problems, then simply say, my Baba from the heart. Then the problem will reach the Father and you will become light. You want to become light, don't you? Because if you become light, you will be able to fly back with the Father. You won't return by walking. So any problem, small problem, big problem, simply say, my Baba, Baba, you take this. And then the problem will reach the Father and you will become light. And so this is something that, because these are the only things that he said when I was quite close to him, this has become very, very central to my effort since that meeting on the 31st of March, 2007. And I think it's a big key. It's a big secret. You know, he says, children don't use me enough. I even remember Sister Mohini, who's now our administrative head, once giving a class, and she was saying she was once walking with 2 heavy shopping bags. And she said, oh, Baba, these are very heavy. Will you take one of them? And she said her arm became really light, as though she wasn't actually carrying the bag. And she said later on, she realized, oh, I made a mistake. I should have asked him to carry both of them.